I just want to say to the men of this country, just shut up and step up.
Average man, you need to stop whining now. Lili Loofbourow, in her great article on Slate.com, September 18th, summed it up very nicely. I will read a bit from her article. It is a remarkable fact of American life that hordes of men are now defending sexual assault. A substantial group, many of them in politics, has taken to the internet to argue that a 17-year-old football player should get to do as he likes to a 15-year-old girl. Say, for example, trap her in a bedroom, violently attempt to remove her clothes, cover her mouth to muffle her screams without consequences to his life or his reputation. The locker room, once invoked to normalize Trump's language, every man talks this way behind closed doors, has expanded into a locked American bedroom with a woman trapped inside. It's all in good fun, defenders declare, horseplay. Here's the most surprising part. They have launched this peculiar defense despite the fact that the accused party denies that it ever happened. A White House lawyer was quoted saying, "If somebody can be brought down by accusations like this, then you, me, every man certainly should be worried." Per this dark vision of the future, any consequence for committing assault, even being unable to move from one lifetime appointment to another lifetime appointment, is the beginning of the end of a just society. There is a corollary, and it is that teenage girls should not expect justice for coming forward, which Ford had been rightly reluctant to do. Even if true, teenagers, tweeted Minnesota State Senator Scott Newman, summoning a vision of American adolescence where being trapped and attacked is a boisterous fact of life. He added, however, that he did not believe Ford. Writing for the Wall Street Journal, Lance Morrow minimized the victim's side of things further by declaring that the incident wasn't serious enough to matter. The thing happened, if it happened, an awfully long time ago, back in Ronald Reagan's time. No clothes were removed, no sexual penetration occurred. What's a little assault? Or fearing for your life and having to fight free and hide if no penises were inserted and the Gipper was in charge? This trend isn't really that mysterious, of course. The reason for this panicked defense of assault, even as Kavanaugh continues to firmly deny it, is fear. Not fear that the system will punish men wrongly, but that it will punish them rightly. Sure, they will legalistically argue that the rules have changed on them, and it's true to a point that things were different in 1982. Date rape wasn't yet an available concept, meaning that women had no way of describing the peculiar horror of being sexually assaulted by someone they knew. But the times weren't quite as different as these guys like to pretend they were. Just because there was no socially validated vocabulary for a man forcing an acquaintance to have sex against her will did not in any way mean that the man thought what he was doing was just fine. Men are not idiots. Boys will be boys is a nostrum with the designated purpose of chalking male malfeasance up to innocent high spirits. It's a saying that is meant to exonerate, but here's the funny thing. It only works on the agreed upon assumption that boys do shitty things, the gravity of which we're supposed to ignore or dismiss. The message isn't that the boys don't know that the things they do are bad. It's rather that the rest of us should forgive, understand, and love them anyway, without their needing to ask for it. She goes on, is it any surprise that an incentive structure like this one breeds entitled indifference to girls and women in the coddled party, meaning men, and in the system that coddles them? Is it any surprise that men would panic at the realization that the system that they could depend on to look the other way is fast eroding? I never thought I would see a group that has spent years laughing at the very idea of anything like rape culture suddenly not just admitting that it exists, but arguing that it should. Nothing should be done about it. Male malfeasance is an unstoppable cocktail of culture and biology. The subtext, stripped of all chivalric pretense thanks to the recent panic, is that victims don't matter. They're invisible because they're unimportant, and women's pain is irrelevant. In contrast, her article goes on, during these past few weeks, nothing has been presented as more crucially central than men's pain. Almost as if they'd planned it, a clutch of disgraced men who were finally exposed for years of ongoing alleged abuse has been creeping back towards their long-lamented spotlight. There are quite a few. These reputationally injured parties range from Gian Ghomeshi and John Hockenberry to Louis C.K. to Bryan Singer. What they share, besides a history of inflicting their sexual attentions on the less powerful because they felt like it, is an itch to be famous once again. They want their timeouts to be over. They have suffered, they believe, and they wish us to know it. This should be laughable. Anyone who assaulted or harassed someone and escaped without a record should be thanking their lucky stars. Their minimal privation mostly consists of being economically comfortable and doing without attention for 10 or 11 months. But they grew up in a world that taught them that they, men, get to do the things they did. They feel, accordingly, that they have been unjustly penalized. They believe they are suffering greatly. Many of us have been trained from birth to believe that men, unlike women, are long-suffering and stoic. That means that men's pain, when they do express it, strikes us, women, as almost holy. It took me decades, the author continues, to realize that something like the opposite is true. It's not that men's pain isn't real, it's that our culture vastly overestimates it. A certain kind of man not getting exactly what he wants, precisely when he wants it, will truly believe he is suffering more than a woman in pain who has never been told that what she wants might matter. While this doesn't make him a liar, it does limit him and blind him to those limits. The painful experiences claimed by women make no impression at all on a certain kind of man's sense of reality. The point of all this is that he said, she said accounts aren't the empty contradictions we often dismiss them as. They can tell us quite a bit about the different realities in which men and women get to live. We think of these testimonies as being equally valid, even if they are at odds. We usually assume that the woman has somehow exaggerated or misremembered or misread the context or lied. Senator Orrin Hatch said of Ford, "I think she's mistaking something, but I don't know. I don't know her." We don't question the particulars of someone's account of their mugging, but rape inspires people to start panning the story for possible misunderstandings. But given all of the above, there is actually a decent explanation for this. The painful experiences claimed by women make no impression at all on a certain kind of man's sense of reality. Her perspective is as unreal as it is inconsequential to him. The result? His and her story can be, in a limited and horrifying sense, equally true. It's believable, in other words, that Ford says that she was scarred by the attack and dealt with it in therapy decades later. It's also believable that Kavanaugh pal Mark Judge has no recollection of being in the room while Kavanaugh allegedly attacked her. Not because he was drunk, though he does have a history, but because this incident with a struggling, screaming teen girl might be to him too unremarkable to remember. It would be great if this appalling imbalance had been fixed by Me Too in 11 short months. But if anything, the hysterical hyper-correction among men has combined our habitual sympathy for them with a plea to extend their exceptionalism. They're finally just willing to say what was once held in common. Women aren't full citizens whose bodily autonomy and personal liberty matters. The harm to a woman isn't worth punishing anyone over, as long as you get yours. Convicted rapist Brock Turner was defended by his father on precisely these grounds. He should get probation because jail time would be a steep price to pay for 20 minutes of action out of his 20-plus years of life. Note that the human person Turner attacked literally does not factor in to this perspective. It's useful to have naked misogyny out in the open. It is now clear, and no exaggeration at all, that a significant percentage of men, most of them Republicans, believe that a guy's right to a few minutes of action justifies causing people who happen to be women physical pain, lifelong trauma, or any combination of the two. They've decided, at a moment when they could easily have accepted Kavanaugh's denial, that something larger was at stake, namely the right to do as they please, freely, regardless of who gets hurt. Rather than deny male malfeasance, they'll defend it. Their logic could not be more naked or more self-serving. Men should get to escape consequences for youthful indiscretions like assault. But women should not, especially if the consequence is a pregnancy. And this perspective extends 100% to the way they wish the legal system to work. Harms suffered by women do not rate consideration, much less punishment. Google the mortality rate for women when abortion was illegal. As if that weren't bad enough, this recent spate of attempted rehabilitations casts into sharp relief how little men socialized to think this way actually care, still, about the women and men they've harmed. The men exposed by Me Too are testing the waters for their planned return, with a surprise performance here, a profile there, perhaps a giant self-regarding essay in a high-profile magazine. Some have offered to shade in their experience of disgrace as if they were tragic heroes rather than prurient narcissists. Read those and search for any sign however slight, that they've given their alleged victims pain 1/10 of the consideration that they have given their own. Perhaps they erred, but what more do we want from them? Haven't they endured enough? She concludes, the answer is no. So that was the very cogent and clear analysis by author Lili Loofbourow on Slate.com. So, men are now afraid. Let me speak directly to average men. And for those of you who are not familiar with my perspective and teachings, I do teach that there are 3 types of men. 10% of all men are so awful that all we can do rationally is to separate them from society so no further people will be harmed. People like Jeffrey Dahmer, Charles Manson, and our current president. That 10% are the awful men. Another 10% of all men are aware men, wonderful men, men who respect life, men who honor women, men who do their best to be aware, caring, compassionate, thoughtful human beings. Those are aware men. The other 80% are average men. Now, most of us would like to believe that average men are basically good guys. But the state of the world created by average men's behavior and worldview proves that the average man is not indeed a good guy, although he can look on the surface for a while like one. Like Brett Kavanaugh looks like a good guy, talks like a good guy, seems like a good guy, smiles like a good guy, until you look just under the thin veneer. Average men are raping women every day. Average men are the men going on Asian sex tours and having sex with, actually I should say, sexually assaulting and raping 10-year-old Thai girls, and then flying back to their wife and kids and dog as if nothing happened. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands, if not millions. Average men are the millions upon millions of men who view horrific woman-abusing so-called gonzo porn on their computers every day, as if that is just a normal thing. That's average men. So now, average men are telling us how afraid they are. You all need to stop talking now, because here is the truth. Average men, you are not really truly afraid. If you take no negative actions in your life against women, women will not harm you. Nothing woman will do will harm you. You are not truly afraid that we women will somehow unfairly harm you. No, you are 2 things. 1, you are worried that you will finally be called to account, for your past crimes, and you are too irritated, and you are calling this emotion afraid or fear, which it is not. You are irritated that it now appears that you no longer have the freedom to abuse as you have done for so many thousands of years, to abuse as you wish, as you have done for so long. Neither of those situations causes true fear. True fear, truly being afraid, is what a woman is when a man has his hand over her mouth to prevent her from screaming as he is trying to rip her clothes off, while another male is cheering him on from the sidelines and assisting him. That is fear. That's afraid. We women are completely conditioned and brainwashed to be nice, especially women working in the, up until now, man's world of legislation and politics. Women in politics for the last few decades, the few that there have been notable for how restrained, how polite, how civil, how reasonable, how calm they have been when talking about the situation for humanity, about women's rights, about men's abuse. So when a nice lady legislator actually gets to the point where she looks right in the camera and publicly tells men to shut up and step up, then you know we have reached a breaking point.
Yes. Of course it helps that there are women on that committee, but you know what? I expect the men in this country and the men in this committee, and many of them, believe me, because we all signed on to this letter to demand an FBI investigation, but really, guess who's perpetuating all of these kinds of actions? It's the men in this country, and I just want to say to the men in this country, just shut up and step up. Just shut up and step up. Just shut up and step up.
I teach the 4 powers of woman, the maiden, the mother, the queen, and the wise woman. And if you've listened to my teachings or taken the Queen online course, you know that women have been in the imbalanced state of the mother archetype, which I call the overgiving mother, for many thousands of years now. Our queen, the one with boundaries, has been shoved into the dungeon of woman's mind by patriarchy, by threats, by oppression, by murder. But every group mistreated by another has its breaking point, and we women may be coming close to ours. I say the queen in woman is the one with a vision for how life should be lived, not average men's vision, which is what we are suffering under now, the so-called vision that is literally destroying humanity's ability to live on this planet. But no, the Queen's vision, a vision for how humanity can live life as it was always meant to be. We've done it before in ancient matriarchies. Look it up, study it. The evidence is there. We can do it again. But women need to see clearly, and we need to step up ourselves and lead, just as we are starting to do. Average men cannot be allowed to lead society. Look at the mess they've made of it. It will take women to heal humanity. I say the queen in woman is one with boundaries, and it's time now to place strong, loving boundaries on average men everywhere. Everywhere. In the home, with your family, in the workplace, in the halls of politics.
Just shut up and step up.
Everywhere. Not because we women are angry, but because life is not being lived as it was always meant to be. Because when one group is allowed to abuse another, that is the beginning of the end for everyone. It's time to place strong, loving boundaries on average men and their behavior, not only for us as women, but for our children, for the society we live in, for all life itself on earth, which the average man, up until now, apparently couldn't give a damn about. It's time for women, for queens, to teach average men how to become aware men. And average men, when they become aware men, will be far happier for it. So, average men, stop talking now about how afraid you are. You are being ridiculous. You have no idea what fear actually is. So stop talking now, unless you are speaking as an ally to woman, in which case you might be an aware man. And if you are, we women welcome you, because that's what an egalitarian matriarchy is, not women lording it over men, the way men have done to women for some 6,000 years. No, an egalitarian matriarchy is a culture where women are honored as central to life, which they are, where children are cared for carefully as the future, which they are, and where aware women and men lead society together for peace and prosperity and justice and the good of all. So average men, stop whining about how afraid you are now.
Just shut up and step up.
Stop talking now. Sit down. Let women lead. Stop grabbing power. You have not done a good job with it. And we women are not buying your whining about being afraid. So stop whining and step up. Step up into true manhood. A true man is an aware man, a man who honors woman, a man who defends and protects and supports all life, a man who has reverence for all creation. If you'd rather whine about how afraid of women you are, then you deserve every boundary we women shall place on you. Average men, we will no longer tolerate your foolishness. It's time for the Queen and woman to lead you to goodness for your own good. Blessed be.